Hello and welcome. I am thrilled today to have the gorgeous, wonderful, lovely Alana Avery with me. Welcome, Alana.
Oh, thank you so much, Jen. It's great to see you.
And you too. And I know we're going to talk about your specialist topic, well, one of your specialist topics. But before I do that, do you want to tell us for everyone listening who doesn't know you as well as I do you want to tell them a little bit about you and what you do?
Yeah, thank you. My work is around coaching and facilitation, and this means that I spend quite a bit of time with people, working closely, listening deeply, co-creating spaces, and collaborating with different groups, organizations, individuals. Um, my role, which I'm figuring out as I go along, is here to unpack different issues that might be misunderstood and be that person in that person's corner, supporting them to get unstuck, giving them a chance to gain clarity, and certainly not there to fix, but hopefully giving them that time to think themselves and unpack different solutions to what's going on. So how I do that is through individual one-to-one coaching sessions, through group coaching, and some facilitation as well. I came to coaching through doing peer support sessions with different groups and different communities, where we held a check-in at the beginning of every gathering, and I'm keen for us to do that today as well, to model what we're talking about. And essentially, from then, having worked with lots of different groups through the charity Herd, I've carried on that work, more recently focusing on stigma and poverty, and working as well. I love. I think we all need that sense of belonging, wherever it is, whether it's in the workplace or whether it's finding value outside of work. And I really believe in building relationships and building community and finding space for connection, finding those places where we can build trust with each other. And I think that trust and that community can then lead to change, where we have the ability to imagine a different future, imagine what's possible. I don't like to shy away from challenge or conflict. I like to get stuck in. And I think you relate to that a little bit, seeing, how we can bravely look at a challenge as a possibility for learning. And I think that is where the nuggets of learning can lie, is where the disagreement is in the room, and finding those voices and bringing those voices in. But I really believe in cracking open possibility. So especially in these days where we have that sense of hope is really needed, we can do this, we can make that happen. And that's the ethos that I work to.
I mean, there's so much in there I want to unpack, and so much that I love, as I would, because you and I are quite aligned in our values and our approach. I know that your experience has been holding groups of people who can have very differing opinions and perspectives about really hot topics that are on the edge and fringe of our societies, that people tend to just go, oh, let's not talk about that. But the complexity comes from the topic of conversation and the diversity of opinions. And I think we're finding our way into what we're going to talk about today, which is the power of a check-in.
Mm.
Power of a check-in. And so for people who are listening to this, because this is a tool that we're suggesting every leader needs to have in their toolkit, is to be able to do a really good check-in and a really good check-out. And
Yeah.
people listening going, what on earth is that?
Yeah.
Who've never heard of it. How would you describe it to those people?
Well, I think the best way is to show rather than tell. And I will get into the practicalities. But I thought we could start off with a check-in ourselves and plan a little checkout at the end. Um, and starting this conversation as a check-in, an open question. I'm going to use one open question and keep it pretty simple. And that question is, where do we hope to get to off the back of this recording?
Brilliant question. Do you want to go first, or shall
I've
I?
had a chance to think about it, which is
Go on then, you go first.
I've got I'm happy to go first, but I think there's three things. I really want to get to three little places off the back of this conversation. I really appreciate the opportunity as well, so thank you. I want to expand on the learning that I gained from having conversations with you, and I'll always come away with a new insight when I'm talking to you and working with you. So it's definitely learning. It's definitely I want this to be enjoyable. I want it to be enjoyable for anyone listening, and also for both of us, um, and and smile as we as we dig into it. Um, but also, I'm really keen to get to a place of clarity at the end, to have clarity of my own thought, but for also to have gotten across quite a few tips and some clear practical things that people can think about. Um, as they're listening, I would like them to come away with at least one tip that's very doable and accessible.
Mm.
And so I'm really keen for my own pace in the way that I speak and in how I obviously sped up there, but I'd like to slow my pace down so I can get across yeah, some really clear nuggets that help people give them a bit of pause for thought around how to use check-ins and check-outs at work.
Yeah, great. So my check-in then, what do I want to get out of today? So I guess first and foremost, I want this podcast episode to feel like it's chocked full of value for people listening, and that like similar to you, that they're like, oh, I see the benefit in a check-in. I understand how to do it, and I feel resourced enough to go and try it. So I guess that's first and foremost. Uh, Secondly, for me, it's about us enjoying the process of just being here together, and I guess doing our best as any human can to really role model that thing of authentic leadership, which is like trying not to put ourselves under pressure to be perfect, and permission to just have a conversation and go off piste. I think this it's a very specific, tiny process, but the concept of a check-in is vast. So I'm curious to see where we'll go in our conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
And I thought as a checkout, we could do something a little bit more focused on the body. Just give us a chance to check in,
mm,
and that might be of interest if people are, listening
yeah,
in on bringing in some breath work maybe into their leadership practice.
definitely. And embodiment and somatic work is a really
Yeah.
hot topic in leadership development. So
Mm.
so yeah, that'd be great. I think we're already touching on an aspect of check-in, and I know that we still haven't really kind of gone into what is it then. But one of the beautiful things for me about check-in is and check-outs, you can be really creative with them. Like there's so many different ways of handling them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Agree.
yeah. So tell us about check-in then. Tell us about, well, what is it? Why should leaders give a shit about it? And how do they work?
So, thinking about this, I did a little bit of scoping with some people in my network as I was prepping, and there's a few different responses that came back, which was really interesting around how uh, how we approach a check-in in different ways. How a check-in is maybe not just seen at the beginning of a meeting and then a checkout at the end of a
Mm,
session, but is seen as part of connection and building relationships. So lots of ways to do that, obviously. Away days, one-to-ones, gatherings, workshops. I came across a US survey which showed it was 2024 research and a report called The New Era of Leadership.
mm,
And a third of respondents in that survey said that they could be doing more to support their employees' personal lives.
mm,
Um, and it's interesting to me, and I think we'll probably talk about the challenges a little bit more around what are the big challenges leaders face. But when it comes to having difficult conversations, the risks around burnout, um, where we got to following the pandemic, um, there's a lot tied up in our self-worth and work,
mm.
and we need to decouple worth and work. We need to take them apart and recognize that people are not entirely defined by their relationship or ability to work. No one should be a burden. Um, so understanding our value in the workplace and how we adapt and what works for some doesn't work for others, and this whole person approach, showing up as your whole self at work. I think all of this feeds into what a check-in can achieve and what
Mm.
it can do with teams and with relationships and with people. But primarily, I think we need to understand that we have value in the world outside of work and that work doesn't always have to equal worth.
Yeah.
Um, and that's coming from a project focused on stigma and socioeconomic status. So putting it out there, coming back to the little bit of scoping that I did with some people across different sectors, across health, publishing, the arts, defense, service, marketing. Check-ins are very much used in in theatre, so with actors and on stage, creating that space for a little circle of tuning into your body, tuning into your breath, having a moment before rehearsal, before the workshop, where you simply allow space, sit in silence, maybe allow space for people to just say, "This happened to me. Oh, I've got a bad neck today. Um, ate something, not feeling top of my game, or had real joy, got a new part, etc." But also having a gratitude circle. So giving thanks for in a little check-in, which doesn't have to take longer than 5-10 minutes, but actually giving gratitude for some of the things that have gone right, and just holding that space. And it can what helps me in groups is hearing other people speak, and then I think,
Yeah.
oh, that could apply or that relates to me. But then you have the challenge of those, meetings in other spaces where the need to be productive and crack on. And I'm not interested, examples of people I'm not interested in sharing my personal life. I'm not interested in doing that at work. I will care for my team and I will check in with my team, but we're in the meeting for one purpose. And what I would say around that, if people feel like this is a waste of time, and certainly we could dig into that a little bit, what works
Mm.
for different people. But it needn't be more than 5 minutes in an hour or 4 minutes in an hour. And if you're on Zoom, you can use the chat function. Um, asking little questions that help all those voices to be in the room and helps you to align with the purpose of the meeting, with the focus. Um, it can begin to open up that space for creativity and efficiency and productivity. Um, And there's definitely something I'd like to talk about today around psychological safety and those stages of psychological safety. And I think, yeah, maybe I'll pause for a moment and see
Yeah.
how that fits.
Yeah, there's a lot in there. The one of the things I just wanted to pick up on, which I think certainly with the clients I work with that are perhaps more commercial generally, some third sector,
Mm,
uh, that is that piece about relationships, that check-ins are a way of cultivating healthier relationships. And I think one of the things that I find is that the 90% of being in the workplace is getting tasks done or getting shit done, as I like to say. And that then there's a kind of corner over there where the developmental reflection, review, relationship stuff happens. And often the relationship building is kind of put into the let's go for a drink after work,
yeah.
let's go socialize, let's have a off-site going and doing charity work. All very valid ways of building relationships. Then I think what we're speaking more to at the moment is trying to understand people and build relationships in terms of what's needed in the workplace for them to feel like they can bring their whole person to the work, like more of themselves to the work, that we understand each other's preferences for ways of working. And so it's more about the way that we work together than what the work is that we're doing together.
Mm,
Um, and the check-in, if you did a check-in at the beginning of every meeting that you had and a check-out, you have a little micro moment to get to know another person a tiny bit more, and it doesn't have to be saved for that 10% over there to build relationships. So I think that for me is one of the glorious things about check-ins, and the power of that in terms of relationship for businesses is that the greater level of trust and connection that you have within your business, within each other or your organization, the more easier it is to handle conflict in difficult times
Mhm.
because you've got a greater connection. And to your point, I don't think it means you have to spill your heart and tell everybody, your deepest emotional feelings. But it's just trying to find a place to understand each other better.
Mhm. And also understand the context that people are coming from,
Yes.
the impact of global issues on us, the worries that might be personal, that might be something you've read in the news,
Yeah.
and open questions, taking a coaching approach, taking that curiosity into the workplace isn't about fixing or being a therapist or even offering advice to your colleagues. A lot of it is about being curious and allowing for that space to be there to nurture that care and show you've got infrastructures for care in place.
Mm.
Um,
And on a simple level, I often say if you're a leader and you've brought your team together and you're straight into activities, tasks, and who's doing what you're missing is an opportunity to have knowledge and data yourself about what's going on for your team right now. And in just taking 5-10 minutes at the beginning to do a round check-in, and what I think we'll come to process in a minute, because I think process is really important, or certainly for me, the process
mm,
of holding a check-in well.
yes,
But giving that just 5-10 minutes to hear from everyone, how are they doing and what's going on for them?
yeah,
Like actually, as a leader, I'm more empowered because then I've got a decision to go, is what I had planned to do in this meeting still going to be as effective, given I now know how people are arriving, or do I need to pivot? And
yeah,
I think that from a leadership perspective, like this gold dust, because you're
mm,
armed with information and data and you can be more effective with your people and your meetings. So
yeah.
even on a practical level.
Yeah, simple things like a temperature check
Yeah.
in the room, raising of hands, or sliding scale numbers from 1 to 5. And also talking about, okay, if somebody is answering an open question and then they score quite low, maybe in terms of how they're feeling about the project or what they think their role is, to have that agreement beforehand. If you score fairly low, will it be okay if we check if we do have a conversation about that? Because I want to hear your feedback, want to hear where we're going,
Yes.
or that no action will be followed up on. And that's really clear. And
Yeah.
ultimately, that 5 minutes at the beginning of the session is about understanding how everyone's doing coming to the meeting. But we're not judging, we're just sitting to listen, having that. It is a little bit of daring to be vulnerable and sharing yourself. But also, if you're holding the meeting, maybe assigning somebody else to do that check in so that
Mm.
you can really listen. And, and another one of the colleagues from a different area, different department, yeah, can step in into that leadership role for the check in or for the checkout. I've seen that work really, really well in groups who need to be making decisions quite quickly
Yeah.
and who need to be quite aligned on their purpose and really clear on their roles and responsibilities. And often the facilitation it gets handed around until everyone feels as though, okay, we've got this, we're
Yeah.
same page.
Yeah.
Um,
And
I
I think while we're still we're kind of like talking about the benefits, aren't we? I think
Yeah,
one of the things that, like for me, that I experience when I'm working with groups and they're new to a check-in process, and you kind of sat in a circle usually, and we introduce them to the process, explain how it's going to work, and then we do a round. And one of the things that I normally hear, well, I've heard it so many times, is just how cathartic it is, and how people surprise themselves, how much kind of then they start talking and more things come out, and then they're like, oh, he didn't even know that was going on for me under the surface, because I came in here with my head thinking I had these things to do,
yeah,
and just creating a little bit of space for a bit more of me.
yeah.
And for most people, they don't need anything, they don't need any unpacking, they don't need any support. Like the catharsis happens in the sharing,
Mm,
and it does something really magical to the group
mm,
as well, because it gives other people permission to then go, oh yeah, I was feeling a bit like that,
yes,
and then they bring a bit more of themselves.
yeah,
And trust gets formed really quickly,
yeah.
I think, when you can do that.
I think you've touched on that perfectly because I think it creates a story. The check-in allows for a story to be created. I think it allows for 7 stories actually. So you've started by talking about the group. It gives a sense of where the group stands, what they understand about each other as a group or a team. And maybe they're aligned on their goal, or maybe they simply have common ground and they're working towards something that they're passionate about. But I think having the story of the group, I've certainly seen that in peer support sessions with different communities who are coming to the session to build their resilience and their wellness strategies for when dealing with the media. Different walks of life, different backgrounds, different experiences, different lived experiences and expertise. But the peer support session is tied to action. So having a check-in at the beginning gives everyone a chance to say, okay, we know who's in the room. Wow, incredible. Look who's in the room. And that simple check-in at the start could touch on the media, could touch on storytelling, could touch on communications, could touch on activism. But it's understanding where the group is at. And I think the story of the group is really important. But the check-in also allows us to understand ourselves. So it tells a story of how we are doing today in this moment, which changes day to day.
Yeah.
And I have big learning from that in a senior leadership role focused on operations and people, where pandemic, hybrid working, straight onto Zoom, the Black Lives Matter protests were happening. There was a lot going on globally. So it was key for us as a team to not launch straight into the day-to-day runnings of what we were doing, because what we were doing was existing within the context that we were living in. So the check-in just gave space for people to breathe out
Yeah.
and really tell a little story. Didn't need to be much. It was just a little story. If you felt comfortable, optional check-in. But it gave us that data again
Yeah.
that you were talking about.
I have a similar one actually. In the pandemic, I was part of a peer community and we were doing some work together, but we were also a learning community. And we quickly pivoted to Zoom like most people. And Tuesday evenings at 5 o'clock were our how's everyone doing work-wise? You know, is everyone getting the work that they need? Can you pay bills? Practical and practical? How can we be in service of our clients? What do they need that we could be helping them with? You know, lots of those kind of conversations. And then we also had a Friday morning check-in, a separate check-in that was specifically just to gather with other people and have that space to just go, how am I doing? Hear from other people. And I remember at the time, I actually noticed I was getting more value out of the Friday morning than I was the Tuesday one, which was interesting in itself. And the thing that was of real value to me was hearing that other people were feeling similar, thinking and feeling similar things to me in this kind of unknown territory. It was comforting, and I felt less alone in my concerns and worries.
Yeah, absolutely. And even if you're not contributing yourself, being able to listen and given that option is
Absolutely. It's a
really
gift,
valid.
isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think we can
Yeah.
all get better at listening.
I think I think the other parts of the check-in, I've heard as well that it's seen as a bit of a soft approach. It's a bit of a soft leaning thing. Facilitators or those in senior roles need a bit of confidence to do the check-in because it's not going down well and they're getting negative responses from people in their teams. But again, I believe it tells the story of the organization as well.
Yeah.
It tells a story of, okay, well, how are we reflecting the kinds of values that we have in what we're doing in the day-to-day operations? Are we demonstrating care for our colleagues? Is that one of, or care for our work?
Yes.
Maybe the check-ins could be entirely focused on projects, and are we aligned on what we're set
Yeah.
out to do
Yes.
strategically? But what's the workplace culture? The check-ins allow us to get that data from our colleagues on a regular basis, which doesn't need to be formalized, but even just by doing it, you start to build in a bit of a practice, a bit of a shift in the culture. Another area I think there's a story to be told is around power and the power that's in the room and who might hold power as maybe seen as an expert or a senior leader or and actually the check-in shifts that power because everybody has a voice. Everybody is
Keep thinking someone else who has the power is the one, there's always one that's more vocal.
Yes. Yeah. So facilitating it is important,
Yeah.
keeping boundaries around the time that we have and the response of the facilitator or the person that's asking the check-in question I think acknowledging it is really important, but
Mm.
I think it's not there to be delved into a big conversation or a big chat about what you had for dinner last night. It's about hearing it and hearing the level where you've come from. 5 minutes before the meeting, 5 minutes before the check-in, you were in a different place.
Yes.
So there's a story there about your commitment to show up as well, I think. How are we showing up? And what am I committed to doing right now? What do I need? Do I need water? Do I need a snack? Do I need coffee?
Yeah.
Let me show up and let me commit. And through the check-in, we can do it.
Yeah.
I think,
I love
yeah,
that 7 stories. The check-in tells 7 stories.
there's
I,
two others.
oh, I've not done 7. That's my counting skills. Go on, tell me what's
Oh,
the.
no. I'll be quick. And this is it's ironic because telling a story of time is because it gives us data. I think it gives us data on the pace in which we're working. And I've been in meetings where when projects were just running and getting going, plenty of time for check in and check out. As soon as we're going, the pressure's on, we start to drop the check ins. And it feels almost like, oh, I'm forced to do this. I've got to get into this. And actually, that brings up all those feelings of rushing on and feeling worried and anxious and maybe even disconnected. So gathering that data brings us then to a place of, okay, we can focus. Are we here to focus? There's a story of focus there as well. And I think that check-in just brings us back. It can be action oriented, as we touched on. But, what are we here to do? What's our purpose? What's needed? An
Yeah.
open question around that for 5 minutes. How are we doing on the project? What are we hoping to get from it?
Yeah.
Like we did. Where do we want to get by the end of this recording?
Is that definitely 7 now? I feel like we need to move into to how do you do it then? What are the kind of like key things for a leader that goes, oh, actually, I think I want to try this. Like there might be some benefit in this for me.
Mm. Key things. Um, Read the room, get a sense of who you're working with, try things out. We've talked about open questions, maybe a question with one word answers, use the chat function. People talk about working in a circle and each person contributes. You use the technique pop while you're hot when somebody's ready to speak.
Yeah.
Um, Sharing gratitude, recognizing, there is embracing that not everybody is going to want to work this way. And there's also people that might want to work this way. They're not in the room. Maybe being fun about it as well. So asking what fruit you'd be and why, or what are the simple joys that you're having in the week, or acknowledging where you're coming from, what you mentally want to put aside in order to focus, what your expectations are from this meeting, what your assumptions are for the project ahead, hopes, what you imagine you want this piece of work to achieve. Maybe even acknowledging the person to your left and something that they achieved when you were, rushing to that deadline together. And I think ensuring that you're not there to fix, that you're there to listen, you're there to try it out, try using the coaching approach. I think there's something in it for everybody, whether you're working in the charity or you're in the military.
Yeah.
You be there to listen, but potentially sit with any discomfort that might be there, and allow that challenge to come through, because then you get to the stage of in psychological safety around challenge. You're contributing and then you're challenging, and you can invite that avoids group think as well, and you can invite those opportunities for improvements and learning, and adapt. I think maybe even try it for 1 quarter, or try it for a month, or try it today for 5 minutes,
Yeah.
and see how it goes, and learn and check in with people about how they found it. Could be visual as well, could be getting out into nature, could be using Miro, or using using your whiteboard, using post-its, doing something quiet with post-its rather than verbal.
Yeah.
Different ways of communicating comes back to what you were saying about the different ways of working.
Yeah.
How do you already work, and what would go down well?
Yeah. And about being innovative. So I think I would add to that. I think when I'm doing a check-in with a group and it's the first time, and there's maybe a lot of people that have never done a check-in before, I would normally say to people, so we're going to do a check-in and I'm going to tell you how the check-in's going to work. So
Mm.
I've got a few questions and everybody's going to have a chance to speak to those questions. Everyone will say something. So we're going to do what we call a round. So everyone will say something in response to the question or questions or activity as we've decided. And we'll hear something from everyone. And what we're not going to do is interrupt or
Mm.
reply or try and have a conversation with that person. So our natural tendency is we hear someone around a meeting going, oh, I watched that new thing on Netflix last night. And you go, oh, I've seen that too.
Mm.
And then it's like it's gone from them checking in to having an interaction with you, like the energy shift. So I'm really clear to say to people, the one thing you have to do is focus on not joining in. Like, do not join in until we've heard something from everybody. And
Yeah.
then we'll see if there's any questions or themes emerging or anything that needs to be responded to. But one of my golden rules is we don't unpack people's personal stuff. So if people want to share that they've got some stuff going on, like maybe their mother's in hospital or their child's sick or they've got other things going on in the back of their mind and they just want to let us know that they've got that going on, we don't then unpack it. That's their stuff. If they want to talk about it, they can, but we are not here to offer counselling.
Yeah.
But it's good to know where people are at. Um, and I I always feel a little bit militarian to begin with when I'm setting out the rules, and I think, oh, it's just a bloody check-in. But we're so hardwired as humans to want to connect and rescue and resolve and make people feel better or cheer people up, aren't we? Rather than just be with them with whatever's going on.
And that's the coaching approach as well.
Yes.
Not there to fix or resolve, but to be in your corner, be there. And I think that's working your way through the stages of psychological safety as well, from inclusion to learning to contributing to challenging. That safety starts to build in, that sense of belonging starts to build in. You're bringing in the different voices and you're reducing the fear of taking part, of participating, of making mistakes,
Mm-hmm.
and then you reduce the anxiety and you improve mental health. Coming back to that survey, people do care about each other, and we can lose sight of that in meetings when actually um, that we do need to acknowledge boundaries and be supportive, and those ways of working are going to be different. But as I said, I keep coming back to it. I think there's something in a check-in and a check-out for everybody.
Yes, I agree.
It can be adapted. There isn't a one rule book, and there's plenty of resources.
Yeah. And I think if I was a leader listening to this, my advice is one of the things that I see leaders do a lot is that they feel they have to have an answer for everything and they feel they need to fix every problem that everybody has.
Mm.
And so we get into a dynamic where there's a lot of rescuing and parenting going on in the workplace. And one of my big missions is to kind of eradicate that from the workplaces
Mm.
and just encourage people to really take an adult approach. And one of the things I say often about in particular, if any one of us needs something, we're all capable of asking for it.
Mm.
So you don't need to fix me or rescue me or jump in or do anything. I'm absolutely fine for me to share what's going on for me, and then for us to move on into the work. That's fine.
Mm.
If I need something, I can ask for it.
Mm. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we've talked about the benefits, we've talked about the process, we've talked about the multiple different ways of applying it, challenges that it helps leaders overcome. What am I missing? What about a tip? So there's a leader out there listening to this podcast
Mm.
like, oh, there's something in this check-in.
Mm.
It's simple and deep at the same time, isn't it? It's both and it's beautiful. What would your top tip be for a leader who's like, yeah, I'm going to go try this?
I think my top tip is give it a go and do a temperature check, see how it lands, and keep building confidence to try a different way of doing it until you land on a 5-minute check-in, 5-minute check-out that can work for your team and what you're trying to do.
Yeah.
And explain why you're trying it. Explain to the team what the boundaries are around it, what the expectations are, that it's a very small commitment and you're doing it because XYZ because you care, because you want it to be productive, because you want the team to work efficiently, because you want the relationships to be nurtured. And as a leader, I think we need to get in touch with our own purpose as well of what it is that we're doing, and surround ourselves with other leaders for that sort of peer support, and that resources sharing, because that's a community that you're also building there as well of leaders who can say, hey, I did it this way and it worked, or this didn't work at all, it didn't land. But what will work is trying, and giving 5 minutes a go in the next meeting.
And if anyone's out there thinking, oh gosh, it feels a bit tricky, we are going to include your contact details at the bottom of this podcast. So anyone that wants to reach out and get in touch with you for some advice, some consultancy, or even to come in and facilitate some group sessions, and you'll be able to role model check-ins in action. We're going to have all that detail underneath the podcast.
Thank you.
I just want to say a really big thank you to you. I've enjoyed this conversation, and I feel like we could do check-in part 2 and part 3 in the future because there's so much more to go at. But yeah, just to say thank you. Thank you for taking the time out and for doing all of the pre-work to arrive ready to dive in really deeply and beautifully into this gorgeous topic of check-in. And what a pleasure it is always to just have a conversation with you.
Thank you. Shall we do one quick checkout?
I nearly forgot. It's a good job you're holding the process.
So I thought we'd just notice how our bodies are doing. I've noticed that I've had my legs crossed the whole time. So I'm just going to put both feet on the floor, and settle a little bit. And I was leaning in quite a lot. So I'm noticing that my spine was leaning in towards you, I think with interest and engagement. But yeah, I've had a little bit of neck pain today as well. But I'm just sharing that. I'm just noticing that and sharing that without any expectations or judgment. What are you noticing?
Yeah, I noticed sort of halfway in I was kind of sat on an angle and then wanted to straighten up. I had the whole, oh God, we're filming it thing going on in my head. And I feel really relaxed. Like it's such a, I feel like the check-in actually at the beginning, I know I am veering off a little bit, and I know the checkout was about body and noticing my body. My body is very relaxed. I feel very calm. It's been good to just straighten myself up because I noticed I was kind of leaning in, like I was sort of felt like I was huddling with you while we've been talking in a way. And I think the fact that we did the check-in at the beginning actually has given me permission to let go of running through our questions that we talked about beforehand and just going where our energy has allowed us to go. And I think we've had a more meaningful conversation as a result of doing that for me. And I think that's what's helped me to feel more settled in my body and calmer. Yeah, I kind of forgot that we were filming. It's him. But yeah.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Lovely way to end.
It is.